Hello, I'm Janet Estervig, and I work here at Attainment Company, and I am here to talk to you about Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA, and how it relates to pre-employment transition services. This PowerPoint is going to be talking about WIOA and the impact on school transition students. The Act was actually signed in July of 2014, and there has been many changes to vocational rehabilitation based on this Act. But Act 4 is the one that relates directly to pre-employment transition services for transition students in your schools. States have been required to submit plans. As you can see on the PowerPoint, there is a direct link to find your state plan on how pre-employment transition services and WIOA will be enacted. Many of the changes include the definition of competitive integrated employment. They made it much more clear in this act, as well as what is expected for being able to provide pre-employment transition services for students, any student with an IEP or a 504 plan. There are now restrictions about placement of students in a transition program that would be paying subminimum wages, such as sheltered workshops. WIOA reinforces the connection between and collaboration between vocational rehabilitation and the schools. The local workforce investment boards in your states also now are directed to work with youth. Some may already have been, but many have not, and so there's going to be a new connection with youth with those programs as well. Also, the idea of really looking at competitive integrated employment for all students with an IEP or 504 plan and not referring any longer directly to a subminimum wage job or training such as a sheltered workshop. So the intent is clear. They want students to be worked with early. They want to offer opportunities for students to participate in work experiences, and they want VR working with students earlier. Both those that are eligible, and they have a new category called potentially eligible students that are leaving the school settings. So this is a collaboration between both the schools and vocational rehabilitation in looking at how do we transition students into employment. What does this mean for schools? There is 3 significant impacts with schools and WIOA. And the first one is the provision of pre-employment transition services, or what we call PreETS. And we'll talk more about that in the PowerPoint. But the second thing is that there's an expectation and an outcome for all students to have competitive integrated employment. And that would be regardless of level of disability. The idea is that students should have work experiences and jobs to prepare them for a life as an adult. And then the third is this real strength and collaboration between vocational rehabilitation and the schools. This collaboration is really a critical piece to this because many schools have already worked with vocational rehabilitation, but now WIOA and pre-employment transition services strengthens that collaboration even further. First, provision of pre-employment transition services. WIOA clearly talks about students with youth with disabilities to have extensive pre-employment transition services so that they can be successful in obtaining competitive employment. So schools are already responsible under IDEA to provide transition, and transition into employment is one of those goals. But now VR state agencies are going to be much closer partners in this process because 15% of their annual funding must now go to pre-employment transition services. So for the state of Wisconsin, where our company is, I was working directly at the Department of Health Services and working with Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. And DVR was spending less than $1 million on youth still in school under 21 and providing this, what we would call now PreETS. Now, because of 15% requirement, their budget is over $9 million. So that's a difference of less than $1 million to over $9 million. That's a huge impact for youth and a very positive impact that youth will be able to receive the funding that they can use and schools can collaborate with them and with Voc Rehab to really make this a true partnership, and the funding would be available for that. There's also requirement that VR and schools collaborate with the plans. So an IEP must also match what's called an IPE, or an individualized plan for employment, which vocational rehabilitation writes. So these two plans now are required to be directly linked and the planning process done together. The second thing is that with an outcome of competitive integrated employment, it does mean that students can no longer go directly from the school into a sub-minimum wage job, which is typically a sheltered workshop setting. So it is required now that vocational rehabilitation works with every student in the classrooms in transition to learn on-the-job skills so that they can actually work in competitive integrated employment. This is a new experience for some of the individuals who had thought they'd go directly from school and transition into sheltered workshops. And that no longer is allowed under WIOA. They must work with vocational rehabilitation first. So that requires then that schools cannot contract with workshops to provide sub-minimum wage employment. They can contract with workshops to provide competitive integrated employment or supported employment or work experiences. So many school districts now are collaborating and working with the local agencies on work experiences, job shadows, opportunities to see what's out in their community and careers that they may be interested in working in. And the third, again, is this collaboration that all activities that are paid for under PreETS must directly be used for students that are in school. And this can be up until they're 21, and actually some students may go longer based on your state. So students and families, it's really important to get connected to vocational rehabilitation and your local VR counselors sooner than later. Most school districts now will have a specific counselor that works with their schools and specifically now in PreETS. Again, remember that 15% of VR's total budget must be spent on this category of clients. So what does this mean? What are the PreETS? So the PreETS, there's 5 of them. There's called what they call 5 required activities. And I explain them in my transition talk. You can go to the blog on our attainmentcompany.com website to see more and hear more about PreETS. But the 5 are clearly leading students to competitive integrated employment. The first one is job and career exploration. The second one, work-based learning. The third one looks at post-secondary education opportunities or other credentials that students can gain and learn skills. Fourth one is workplace readiness training, which in the past, vocational rehabilitation was not as involved in this area. This can be financial literacy. It can be how soft skills that you need before you go to work, hygiene skills, social skills. And so now these skills and this training, which we all know is critically important in being successful in a job, can also be funded under PreETS. And the fifth one is self-advocacy. Often many of the independent living centers in your states may have been having self-advocacy classes for people with disabilities, but this is directly for students in school that would have an opportunity to learn more about self-advocacy and self-determination. And this is a PreETS activity that can be funded under vocational rehabilitation. So their state center for technical assistance is called WINTAC, and their website has a lot of resources and a lot of information about PreETS and in general about WIOA, and you can learn more about it at that website. I wanted to tell you also that there are 9 authorized activities as well. There's the 5 required, but there are also 9 authorized. These are provided only after a state has determined that they've used as much of their funds as they can for the 5 required activities. And they are required to use that funding every year for PreETS. The implementation of strategies to actually increase more independent living and inclusion. This could be, these 9 categories could be a variety of activities that I would talk to as a provider or as a school district and see if there would be opportunities within your state vocational rehabilitation agency to fund programs that may meet one of these 9 authorized activities. So individually, look at your state plan, look at what their plan is for, how they're going to implement WIOA, and specifically how they're implementing PreETS. And the 5 required activities is one piece of it. These 9 authorized activities in these 2 slides can also give you a variety of ideas of how you could present to your rehab state agency on potential plans or projects. So every student and every youth has their own path to employment, and we do know that. And so the idea of schools and vocational rehabilitation working together along with students and families to really look at successful employment outcomes is a process that starts with students as early as 14 years old and then works all the way through until they graduate at 18 or 21 if they're in transition programs. We have an example of a gentleman that went through a school program in transition and now is working at a hospital. And so that website that we have on this slide brings you to him and talks to Ben and his family and his co-workers and his supervisor about the success of what work experience in school can do in then developing into an actual job. If you have any further questions about WIOA, please don't hesitate to contact me, and I am happy to send you additional resources specific to schools or as an adult provider for employment services. I have opportunities to share how WIOA is being implemented across the country with pre-employment transition services. So there's my contact information, and thank you so much for listening.